Good morning. My name is Jennifer Healy, and I'm in the Technical Marketing Group with the California Regional Office here in Redlands. Joining me today is Ann Rulin, who is the lead ArcGIS Server Product Engineer. We want to welcome you to today's live training seminar, What's New in ArcGIS Server at 9.2. There are 5 main topics that we will address today. We'll begin by looking at some of the product changes that have been made to ArcGIS Server at the 9.2 release. Following up with product details, including product platforms, additions, and capacity levels. Most of the presentation will focus on building server applications. This section will look at the workflow for publishing GIS services to the web and creating a web mapping application using ArcGIS Server Manager. The next topic looks at the new GIS services for displaying data, performing analysis, and data management. The live training seminar will finish with a look at some of what's new for developers at 9.2. Throughout the presentation, there will be a series of demonstrations, review, and question and answer sessions. If you have a question you'd like to ask, please click Ask the Presenter button in your web browser. Let's begin with a product overview of ArcGIS Server 9.2 and highlight some of the key goals of this release. 9.2 is a very significant release of ArcGIS Server. It's a complete and integrated server-based GIS. The ArcSCE technology for working with multi-user geodatabases has integrated into ArcGIS Server for data management. Additionally, 9.2 offers web mapping and analysis through the power of web services in a single server product. ArcGIS Server has always been a developer product and continues to be, but a lot of effort has gone into making it easier by including out-of-the-box applications and services. GIS services can be created for mapping, analysis, and data management and consumed by out-of-the-box clients or web applications. ArcGIS Server 9.2 has support for multiple platforms and is available in .NET and Java. It's also has cross-operating system platform support for development on Windows, Linux, and Solaris. There are comprehensive software developer kits for application development. Here is a technology overview of ArcGIS Server 9.2. Authoring components are in the center of the slide: ArcGIS Desktop, ArcCatalog, ArcMap, ArcGlobe, and the new Manager application. All of these applications work together to author your content and push it into the GIS server running as a service. These services will then be pushed out into various clients supported by ArcGIS Server. Most of us think of publishing services over the web to a web application displayed in a browser, but there are other clients, including mobile devices, the new ArcGIS Explorer, and ArcGIS Desktop that can consume these services. ArcGIS Server is a complete web-based GIS. Web applications can now be configured with less effort and no programming. There are out-of-the-box ESRI clients to consume these services, ArcGIS Desktop, and the new free ArcGIS Explorer that we'll introduce later in the presentation. There are many new services that are available for users to consume in their applications, as well as those out-of-the-box applications. One of the key product goals of the 9.2 release was to make it easier to use. A lot of effort was put into making ArcGIS Server administration, creating services, and getting started with building web applications with less effort. Performance enhancements have been made, and now data can be cached on the server for faster rendering in applications. Developer productivity has been enhanced through out-of-the-box applications to get started with less effort. GIS functionality can be leveraged through new GIS services. And ArcGIS Server is a complete server-based solution that can be integrated in an enterprise system with other business systems. Now I'd like to spend a couple of minutes going into our first demonstration, where we're going to look at some applications that have been created using ArcGIS Server 9.2 out of the box. This first application that we'll take a look at has been created using ArcGIS Server 9.2, and there is no programming involved in this application. Everything you see has been created out of the box. This particular application is looking at Mississippi, the coast after Katrina, and looking at the damage. This map has 2 services that are available in it. At 9.2, multiple services can be rendered within the map. The first service that we'll look at contains dynamic data. I can turn these various layers on and off, and the map refreshes and displays them. The second service that we'll take a look at is a cached map service. So the dynamic data is being displayed in the Katrina damage service, and the other data is being displayed in a second service that has been cached on the server. You can see that I can't turn these layers on and off because the data has already been rendered in a set of tiles sitting on the server. These panels that you see here can be minimized, can be opened and closed, and also undocked from the application. So these floating panels can be moved around, and users can place them on their maps where they would like. Also, this map can be made full size. I can hide all of those floating panels and expand my application so that I'm seeing a larger view of the map. There are a series of navigation tools available on the toolbar. So we can zoom in using these zoom tools. Additionally, there's a pan tool, identify, and a measure tool, as well as magnifier window. This toolbar is available to you out of the box. Notice how when I was zooming in, the map refreshes quickly. This is because of the cache that has been created for this service. In addition to those navigation tools you see on the toolbar, we also have navigation controls available here in the navigation panel. At a first look, this looks like a north arrow, but what it is really a navigation control. I can use this to seamlessly pan across my application and move within the browser window. Because this map contains a cached service, I also have a zoom level control. This allows me to zoom to the various scale levels that were set when this cache was created. So you can see each time I click, it's rendering the data from that particular scale level. Some additional features that come out of the box with ArcGIS Server 9.2 applications is the overview map window. I can point to a service to display the overview map, and then you can see this red box here is showing the area that's being displayed currently in the map display. This box is interactive and can be used to move around the map. It also can be resized within this window, and you can change the visibility of what's being shown on your display. So that's a look at some of the features of the new applications created at 9.2. I have one more application that I would like to show you. This application is similar to the one that we saw in the last application. It has all the same features, but this one has some tasks configured. So tasks allow us to ask some questions of our data. We'll go ahead and execute these tasks and see how these work. The first task that I'm going to execute is a search task, or it allows me to find a location on the map by typing it into the text box. This particular task is actually using a service from ArcGIS Services to locate Redlands. You can see it's placed it here on the map in that green push pin. Results from tasks are displayed inside of the results panel where users can interact with these results, and I can change the visibility and further interact with them. The second task that I'm going to show you is the Find Household Size task. This allows me to search for counties in a particular state that have an average household size. In this case, we'll search California for a household size greater than 3.5. Now, this particular task is a query attribute task. So in fact, it's using two fields to query on and find the results of those queries. Query is now displayed inside the results panel. I can expand it here, and I can interactively click on the results, and you can see it's displayed on the map. Just to reiterate, this application was created out of the box. Even the tasks that we executed did not have any custom programming involved in it. Now that we've taken a look at some of the applications we can create with ArcGIS Server 9.2, we'll talk about how we can build those applications in the Building Server section of the presentation. Before we go into our first review and Q&A, I'd like to go over some of the product details of ArcGIS Server 9.2. ArcGIS Server is available on two platforms, ArcGIS Server for the Microsoft .NET Framework, which is available on Windows, and ArcGIS Server for the Java platform, available on Windows, Linux, and Solaris. The platforms are broken into two to provide users with focused installs that include the software developer kit, your development integration, and documentation. The same GIS functionality is available on both platforms, and both of these platforms are shipped in the box. New at 9.2, ArcGIS Server has now been broken into 3 editions: Basic, Standard, and Enterprise. The Basic edition includes the ArcSDE technology, as well as some additional spatial data management capabilities new at 9.2. The Standard edition includes everything available at the Basic edition, as well as 2D and 3D mapping services. ArcView licensed geoprocessing tools can also be used at the Standard level. The Advanced edition gives you all the functionality of ArcGIS Server minus the extensions. This includes all the geoprocessing tools from ArcEditor and ArcInfo, as well as the out-of-the-box editing task. Each edition is available in one of 2 capacity levels: Workgroup and Enterprise. Workgroup is new at 9.2 and is available on Windows servers for small database management. It uses SQL Server Express as the underlying DBMS. Users are licensed for a maximum of 4 gigabytes of data storage. For the larger database management, Enterprise can be capacity level, is a cross-platform and supports multiple DBMSs and doesn't have any storage restrictions. So now let's begin our first review and Q&A. I'd like to review some of the key points that were introduced. ArcGIS Server is a complete out-of-the-box GIS that includes mapping, geodata management, and analytical capabilities. Many improvements have been made to make it faster and easier to get started with. Performance enhancements have been made, and new applications and services are available to increase productivity. ArcGIS Server is now available in 3 editions: Basic, Standard, and Advanced, which can be purchased at the Workgroup or Enterprise capacity levels. Now I'd like to pass it over to Anne to answer some of your questions.
Thanks, Jennifer. Damon from Charlottesville is asking, which version of ArcGIS Server 9.2 are we using during the software demonstrations? Damon, we're using the ArcGIS Server Advanced Edition. Later on in the demonstrations, Jennifer is going to be showing some geoprocessing tools, and that is why we chose to use the Advanced. Jeff from Las Vegas is asking, can ArcMap be used to add data to the table of contents from a remote ArcGIS Server application? Jeff, the answer is yes. ArcMap does, through the Add Data dialog, support adding GIS services from a GIS server. You would navigate to the GIS servers tab, the node, and then find the server that you're looking for, and then just add in that data, same as you would if you were adding in local data. The process of adding is the same. Jeff is also asking about the geodatabase and how that works when you're connecting to it. Jeff, stay tuned for the end of the presentation. Jennifer is going to cover the new geodata services that are in ArcGIS Server 9.2. It allows you to extract and replicate geodata to the different machines so that you can do editing with the geodatabases with ArcGIS Server. Josie from Carson is asking, for those of us who are new to ArcGIS Server, can you explain the SOM and SOCs a little bit more? When you install ArcGIS Server, one of the nodes in the install is GIS Server, and there's 2 subcomponents to that node: the Server Object Manager, also known as the SOM, and the Server Object Container, also known as the SOC. The SOM is installed and is basically the component that is what we often refer to as the traffic cop for the different requests coming into the server. It is the SOC that is actually processing the request, making that map for you, getting the query result for you, finding the address for you. When you're in a distributed installation, you're looking to add power to your GIS server configuration. It is the SOCs that you add to the configuration. Alan from Eugene is asking, does ArcGIS capacity level affect which ArcGIS Server edition you can use? The answer to that is no. There are editions available at each of the different capacity levels. So for the Workgroup and Enterprise capacity, There's a basic, standard, and advanced edition on each. Ben from Denver is asking more about the licensing options offered in ArcGIS Server 9.2. Ben, the new additions for ArcGIS Server are basic, standard, and advanced. Basic gives you geodata management. Standard adds in 2D and 3D mapping, as well as standard geoprocessing tools. And finally, at the advanced edition of ArcGIS Server, you have the full functionality of ArcGIS Server available to you. Such things as web editing and advanced geoprocessing tools are added on. Another question that's coming in is from Chris in Omaha asking, ArcGIS Server seems oriented to large integrated systems. Can it be used by a small organization or work group? And the answer to that is definitely yes, it can be used by small organizations and work groups. And that was really one of the goals of the ArcGIS Server 9.2 release, is to have additions and different capacity levels such that if you are a small organization, there is a price point and an addition of ArcGIS Server that can appeal to you. I'll hand it back to Jennifer, but we'll be answering more questions later on in the presentation.
Okay, thanks, Dan. The next section that we'll take a look at is building server applications. One of the key product goals of ArcGIS Server 9.2 was to make it easier to use. Now let's take a look at the new workflow for building server applications in 9.2. Here is an overview of the 3 steps to building server applications. The first step is to author your service content using ArcGIS Desktop. The second step is to take that content and publish it as a GIS service using ArcCatalog or the new ArcGIS Server Manager application. The final step is to consume this service or use this service in a client of choice. This could be a web mapping application, ArcGIS Explorer, or ArcGIS Desktop, to name a few. So let's go in a little more detail on how to build server applications. ArcGIS Server experience begins by authoring GIS Resources using ArcGIS Desktop. GIS Resources are map documents, MXDs or PMF files, 3D documents created using the ArcGlobe application, address locators used for geocoding addresses, geoprocessing models authored using the Model Builder application, and geodatabases that can be used in a distributed geodatabase scenario. Also, it can be used for building networks and performing network analysis and services. Once our GIS resources are authored, it's time for us to go into step 2, which is publishing the GIS resource. When we are publishing GIS resources, we have 2 applications that can handle this. The first one is ArcCatalog. At ArcGIS Server 9.1, all the publishing was done using ArcCatalog and using the Add New Service wizard that was found underneath your server connection. At 9.2, Publish to ArcGIS Server wizard has been added to the ArcCatalog application. It's accessed by right-clicking on a GIS resource and executing the publishing wizard. Both of the ArcCatalog wizards are also available in the new Manager application, and we'll talk more about Manager in the next slide. ArcGIS Server Manager is a new web-based application. It is there to complement ArcCatalog in administering the GIS server, publishing services, but Manager has some additional functionality not available in ArcCatalog, and that is to build web mapping applications, a web client to your GIS services. There's a lot of flexibility in creating web applications. Things like your map elements can be changed, functionality can be added, and additional properties can be modified to give the application the look and feel you would like. So let's talk more about how we can use services in our applications. One use of services is for visualization. 2D map services show the layers of map documents on the server, and 2D services can also be enabled as a WMS service, a web mapping service, an OGC standard web service. Globe services can also be used as published ArcGlobe documents for displaying 3D data. Services can be KML enabled and consumed in KML clients. When we're publishing our maps that contain rich cartography, scale-dependent rendering, and labeling can be published with ArcGIS Server. Maps support several map functions, including identify, find, select, and query, These map services can be cached on the server, creating a series of pre-rendered tiles at various scale levels that you have control of when you're creating your cache. So when we cache our data, rather than having our maps render on the fly, dynamically render on the fly, we're now pre-rendering them on the server. This results in the rapid display of static-based map images and the rich cartography symbols that you have authored at the desktop level will also be rendered quickly in your map. The final step to building a server application is to create the client or choose a client for displaying your services. One client we can use to consume our services is a web client. We can create web mapping applications using ArcGIS Server Manager. When we build these web mapping applications, we can display map information from multiple different types of services. In addition to ArcGIS Server, I can consume ArcIMS, WMS, and ArcWeb services. The appearance of the web mapping application can be modified by changing the properties. To extend the functionality of our website, out-of-the-box tasks can be configured, or developers can create custom tasks to add more GIS functionality to our applications. So what are tasks? Tasks encapsulate specific functionality for your application, such as querying or editing, or also used to ask questions and display answers. An example of this is the Find Address task. This task allows the users to enter an address and return the results to the web mapping application. Another example is querying an attribute. The results of your query will then be returned to your application. ArcGIS Server comes with many out-of-the-box tasks that are available for you to use by configuring inside of Manager. Here's a list of some of the tasks that are available. If none of these tasks meet your needs, then you can extend your applications by creating and building custom tasks. So let's go into our next software demonstration. In this demonstration, we're going to build a server application using ArcGIS Server Manager. So I'm going to go ahead and log in here to the Manager application so we can begin building our server app. So the first step to building a server application was to author the content. I've already authored the content. Now I'm going to move to the second step, which is to create the service or publish the service. Here's a look inside of ArcGIS Server Manager. Under the GIS Servers tab, I can go and administer my server. Under the Applications tab that I'm on now, this is where I can build the mapping applications. And to publish the services, we do this underneath the Services tab. In this case, my application, I'm going to be displaying a 2D map service. So I have to go and publish that service. So I'll use the Publish a GIS Resource wizard to do this. So the first thing it's looking for is my GIS resource. As I mentioned, I'm publishing a map service. A GIS resource for a map service is an MXD file. So I'll just point it to my Oahu map. I'll give it a name, I'll just accept the default, and I'm going to publish this service underneath a folder directory on my server. Now what ArcGIS Server is doing is examining that MXD file to determine what other capabilities can be enabled on that service. Mapping is always enabled, but in addition to that, you can see there are some other capabilities I could enable, including making this a WMS service available for mobile data access. In this case, we'll be fine with just a mapping service, so I'll just continue through the wizard to publish. It's giving me a summary of that service so that I can take a look, and then it's gone and published it, and it's displaying it underneath the Services tab. This is where I can manage that service. I could delete it, stop it, restart it, and so on. I'm going to go ahead and preview it and just look at the contents of that service to see that everything published okay. Now I can see everything's published, and I'm ready to go to my final and third stage of building an application, and that is building my web application. So I'll click on the Applications tab and create Web Application Wizard to launch it so I can build my server app. I'm going to give it a meaningful name here. This part, the name that I'm giving it here, will be part of the URL for this application. So it's a good idea to give it something meaningful. Now it's asking me for what services I want to use inside of this application. As I mentioned earlier, there are several different types of services that can be used in these mapping applications. If I click the Add GIS Server, this is where I can navigate, or I can add server connections and grab services from them. You can see in the list in the drop-down menu, we can add ArcGIS Server Services and also ArcIMS, ArcWeb Services, and WMS Services as well. I've already made the connection to my server, so I'll go ahead and add my map services. The Oahu map is the service we just published, but this application is going to contain 2 map services. I'm also going to add a base map, which is a service I've created earlier and cache that data on the server. The next panel is to configure some GIS functionality for our web mapping application. There are those out-of-the-box tasks that I talked about earlier. I'm going to create a query task and add some querying capabilities to this application. Once I've added it, I click the Configure button to go and enter in all of the, to configure this task for the users to use inside the browser. This particular task that I'm going to create is going to do something similar to a geocode. It's going to locate a building based on 2 of the attribute values within that building layer. So for the first part, I would like the users to enter the building number, building street number, building address number. And this address number is going to be grabbed, or it's going to be queried against the building number field inside the attribute table of my buildings layer. In this case, I'll allow users to type in a value here. I could supply a default value, or I can leave it blank. I could also grab a sample of values for users to pick and choose from a drop-down list. This query is going to query against 2 different fields, so you can create complex queries. In order for us to be able to locate our building, I also need to know the name of the street. So users will enter in the building number and the street name to locate the building. The street name information is found inside of the street name field within that layer, and again, I'll allow the users to type in a value. There's some additional properties that can be configured in these tasks. For example, give it a nice meaningful name. So maybe I'll call this Locate a Building. You can also change the selection color and some additional properties within this task. Now that I've finished configuring the tasks for this application, I'm going to move into the final 2 phases of building this application. Should give it a meaningful name. This will be the title of your application at the top of the browser. We can change the theme or the look of the web mapping application. We could change the colors here. I'm going to keep it with blue. You could create your own theme and plug it in to your web mapping applications. Down below are some links to some resources at ESRI and also to the help. You could remove these links by just clicking the delete button, or you can add your own if you have some additional web pages that you'd like to link the application to. The last panel here, the last step of the wizard, is to configure all those map elements. Notice that they're all checked by default. If I'd like to remove one of these elements, I can just uncheck it and it won't appear in the web mapping application. But if I'd like to keep them all, there's some settings that I can change in them. For example, in the table of contents, I can change how my layer symbology appears in there, whether I'd like the symbols to be shown or not. Things I can do in the overview map, I can point to a service. Maybe I have a third service that I'd like to appear inside of the overview map panel. The north arrow settings here, you can see there's a variety for users to choose from. So you can change the symbol of your north arrow. The last thing to look at is the scale bar. I can change the units of my scale bar here, and I can also change the colors of the text in the bar. The next thing I'll go is move to the last window of the wizard and finish building my web mapping application. So this application now is being built, and so all of the files are being written out So I could bring this web mapping application into a development environment. Since I'm working with the .NET version, I could bring this into Visual Studio and customize it. Or I could reopen it inside of ArcGIS inside the Manager application and change some of the properties of it. So now we see it's popped up a window with our web mapping application. Looking over at the map contents, you can see both of those services that I pointed to are available inside the map contents. The dynamic service on top, and then also the cache service below. So you can see that cache service, I'm not able to change the visibility of any of those layers. I'll go ahead and zoom in on an area here, and we're going to execute our task. So here it is, the name we gave our task, locate a building. It's looking for two attributes to query on. So I'll give it the address number of the building as well as the street name for it. And then when I click find, it's going to execute that query, and it's returned a result down here in the results panel. So I'll turn that on and right click and zoom to that feature so that it will display within my map. So I can interact with the results of this task just by simply working inside the results panel. I could run the task again or refresh it if I'd like to. You can see here in the map, we now have this blue building that's being displayed as a selected feature, the result from our query task. Well, that's a look at how we build server applications. Let's go back into our presentation. I'd like to ask you a question. To answer this question, go to the review question link in your browser window and click on it to enter your response. The question I'd like to ask is, in addition to GIS services published with ArcGIS Server, the web mapping application also supports the display of ArcIMS services, WMS services, ArcWeb services, or all the above. To submit your answer, click A, B, C, or D, and then click the Send button. In this last section, we looked at building server applications. The ArcGIS Server experience begins with ArcGIS Desktop, where GIS resources are authored. Once we've authored our resource content, ArcCatalog or ArcGIS Server Manager can be used to publish GIS services. With ArcGIS Server 9.2, we can build high-performance mapping services by caching static data on the server for faster map rendering. ArcGIS Server Manager has a built-in wizard for building out-of-the-box web mapping applications. Tasks can be added to extend the functionality of our web mapping applications. I'd now like to pass it over to Anne to take some more of your questions.
Thanks, Jennifer. We have a question that's come in. Is it possible to use MXDs that were created in 9.0 and 9.1 and then serve them with ArcGIS Server 9.2? And the answer to that is yes, that is supported and possible. Mark is asking the question that he'll be upgrading from ArcSD 8.3 to ArcSD 9.2, and will also want to move up to ArcGIS Server 9.2. How are the installations tied or separate? Mark, the installations for ArcSDE and ArcGIS Server are separate. The installation that you're familiar with from ArcSDE is the same at the 9.2, and then ArcGIS Server is a separate installation. Jeff from Las Vegas is asking, when would I use ArcGIS Server Manager? When would I use ArcCatalog? They look like they have overlapping functionality. And yes, the answer to that is yes, they do have overlapping functionality. And what we've done there is that for folks who are coming in with the desktop experience and they're accustomed to managing their data using ArcCatalog, we wanted to have a good experience in ArcCatalog for managing server resources. In the other regard, some folks are coming at ArcGIS Server from more of the web server experience. They're accustomed to using a web browser and managing their web server through the web browser interface and having that flexibility. And for that, we've built ArcGIS Server Manager. So as far as managing GIS services and managing the GIS server and publishing GIS services, Manager and ArcCatalog offer the same functionality. I will make a note that there's one key difference there. ArcCatalog is the interface for building the map caches that Jennifer described earlier. You cannot build a map cache using Manager. Of course, the other difference between the two is that when you start talking about the web applications, is ArcGIS Server Manager. That's the user interface for that. Michael is asking the question, does the ArcGIS Server 9.2 incorporate all the functionality of ArcIMS? And essentially the answer is yes. The one key difference I'll point out immediately is that ArcIMS has support for metadata, and ArcGIS Server at the 9.2 release does not. Other than that, the answer is true. ArcIMS has support for 2D map services and just some basic tools. With ArcGIS Server, you have support for 2D basic tools. And then at ArcGIS Server, you start to add on functionality such as 3D support and more advanced tools. Edward is asking the question, will ArcGIS GIS Explorer be customizable? And the answer to that is yes. ArcGIS Explorer is customizable. ArcGIS Explorer is available now. And it also comes with an SDK. And Edward, you can check out the SDK and find out all the functionality that's available there in terms of customizing ArcGIS Explorer. Kimberly is asking, will the basic or standard level support 3D data? Which level is needed to access ArcGIS Explorer? I'll answer the first question by saying 3D data is supported in the standard. It's not supported in basic. It starts at standard, so it's there at the standard and at the advanced levels. ArcGIS Explorer is a free downloadable product that you can use to view 2D and 3D map services from ArcGIS Server. So your support or your levels for ArcGIS Server are not affected by when you can have ArcGIS Explorer and use that on your machine. Joe is asking the question, does ArcGIS Server allow you to use composite geocoding services? Yes, ArcGIS Server does support composite geocoding services. Edith from Trenton asked the question, are the new types of services OGC compliant? And Edith, we probably answered your question during that last section when Jennifer talked about the WMS services that are in ArcGIS Server 9.2. George from Jacksonville is asking, so in order to do geoprocessing, must we upgrade to the advanced? And George, I'll clarify that by saying the geoprocessing tools that are at the ArcView level are supported at standard. If you're going to use some of the geoprocessing tools that are categorized as the ArcInfo level, then you would need the advanced for that. There's a question related to that. Keith asked, when you say the standard edition has ArcView licensed tools, referring to the geoprocessing tools, do the end users need to access an ArcView license? And Keith, the answer to that is no. The end user, meaning the person who's accessing the web application, to hit that geoprocessing tool, do they need an ArcView license? No. Shane from Salt Lake City is asking, what kind of rasters are supported in Server 9.2? For this question, I can go back and say that your experience with ArcGIS Server, where you get the GIS resources, whether they be maps, locators, globes, geoprocessing tools, whatever it is that you're going to publish out, that experience of creating those GIS resources begins in desktop. So the rasters that are supported in desktop and can be added to an MXD is the same list as what you can say is supported with ArcGIS Server 9.2. I'll answer one final question about the work group and the enterprise levels that we mentioned earlier. Eamon from Dublin is asking, does the ArcGIS Server workgroup only use SQL Server Express? And Eamon, the answer to that is yes. It is only SQL Server Express at the workgroup level. If you want to go to any of the supported RDBMSs, you need to move up to the enterprise level. Okay, some more questions will be answered later on in the presentation, but I'll hand it back to Jennifer right now.
Okay, thanks, Ann. Before we get back into the presentation, let's look at the answer to the review question. The question was, in addition to GIS services published with ArcGIS Server, the web mapping application also supports the display of, and the answer is all of the above. So it looks like a large percentage of you got that answer right. At ArcGIS Server 9.2, all of these services are supported as content inside of your web mapping applications. Let's go into the next topic, GIS Resources. In the previous section, we published a map service and built a web mapping application that displayed the content of our services. Now we're going to look at some other GIS services available with ArcGIS Server. In addition to 2D map services, globe services can be published to deliver high-performance 3D data for viewing in a 3D client. Globe service content is authored using the ArcGlobe application, and they can contain layers that are raster or 2D or 3D vectors. To display these Globe services, there are 3 different options. Globe services can be consumed in the ArcGlobe application through a globe control available with the ArcGIS Engine product and through ArcGIS Explorer, a new client to ArcGIS server. So let's look a little bit more at ArcGIS Explorer. It's a new free lightweight client to ArcGIS server. ArcGIS Explorer is designed to work with a multitude of web services. It's a client to 3D services, 2D services, and these services can be added from ArcGIS server. ArcGIS Explorer comes with out-of-the-box tasks that are using web services to ask questions and return answers to the client. This task framework can be extended through a custom task, which can be programmed, or through a geoprocessing service, which we'll talk about in a few slides. In addition to services that display or can be used for visualization, we also have services that can be used to answer questions and extend our GIS applications with functionality. One of these services is the Geoprocessing Service. Geoprocessing services are models that have been authored using the Model Builder application and then are made available through a task in a web mapping application or as a task in ArcGIS Explorer. Geocoding services are locators authored at the desktop and published as a service. Geocoding services add single, batch, and reverse geocoding functionality for finding or returning locations on the map. This service is not new at 9.2, but many performance enhancements have been made. Network analysis services deliver network analysis solvers. This might be finding a shortest path, routing between multiple locations, finding a closest facility, or a service area. Network analysis can also be done using the geoprocessing tools. The final service that we'll talk about that's new at 9.2 is the Geodata service. The Geodata service is a published geodatabase connection that can be accessed remotely over the web. Geodata services support the extraction and synchronization of changes between distributed geodatabases in a web server. The extraction and synchronization process is handled using the ArcGIS desktop tools. For more information on what's new with the geodatabase at 9.2 or geodatabase replication, please view the archived web workshops on ESRI's training education website. This will bring us into our final software demonstration of the presentation. In this demonstration, I'm going to configure a geoprocessing service. So I'm going to extend the application we created in the second demonstration with a geoprocessing service. So let's begin with the authoring stage of geoprocessing services. Geoprocessing services are authored at desktop using the Model Builder application. Here's a look at the model that I'm going to use. This model allows me to upload a text file. It makes an XY event layer, then copies those features to an output shapefile, which will be returned to my web mapping application. This model has 3 parameters. It requires the user to upload a text file and supply the X and Y, the name of the X and Y field in which the coordinate values are stored. So let's go publish this resource and consume it in our mapping application. So we'll go over to the Service tab and publish our GIS resource. For geoprocessing services, a resource is a toolbox. So I'll point to the toolbox that I'll use and place it inside of my geoprocessing folder. Now it's giving me a summary of the service, and I'll just click Finish to finish publishing that service. Geoprocessing services can be consumed not only in web applications, but also with ArcGIS Explorer. Now I'll go back into my application that I created in the previous demonstration, and I'll edit that application and add the geoprocessing service. The geoprocessing service is added in the task panel of the wizard. Now a geoprocessing task requires a support service, which is my geoprocessing service. Support services are things like geoprocessing services, as well as geocoding services that you can configure at tasks that locate addresses with. Once I've pointed it to my supporting service, I'm going to configure the geoprocessing task. In this dialog, I'm going to give my task a meaningful name, so add XY data. I could supply a help tip for it. Since I published a toolbox as a geoprocessing service, if that toolbox had multiple models in it, then I would have multiple selections here and point to the correct one. Since I only have the one, then I'll just go ahead, I'll just click on it. And the last thing I need to configure for this geoprocessing service is the output directory for the shapefile that my model is going to create. So let's click Finish and take a look at how to interact with the geoprocessing service inside of my web mapping application. So for a long time, users have asked for geoprocessing functionality on the server. At 9.1, if you wanted to do geoprocessing, much of this was done programmatically. Now at 9.2, we have the power to do this by just using our authored models on the server. So now I'm going to execute this geoprocessing task. So the first thing, there are my 3 parameters that you saw that were available in the model. The first one is to upload the text file. So I'll just click to upload my text file. This text file contains points of interest in the Waikiki area, things like restaurants, movie theaters, and some other entertainment places for tourists to go to. The last 2 things I need to supply are the names of the fields where the X and Y coordinates are. When I submit my parameters to the server, it's executing the geoprocessing model that I authored. Return to the client will be a series of points showing the location of each one of those X and Y coordinates. So you can see those red points are now being displayed on the map, showing me the location. It's output a shapefile, so here's the shapefile it's output. I can take a look at the legend and also look at the different features. So it's also giving me some attribute information derived from that text file, telling me the names of those various locations that I've added. Some additional things that are returned from Geoprocessing Services. There's my parameters, my input that I placed into the service. And then lastly, our messages. These are geoprocessing messages that are returned just like the ones that you see when you execute tools inside of desktop. So that's a look at how we can configure a geoprocessing service and use it inside of our web mapping application. Before we get into our last Q&A session, I'd just like to talk a little bit about the developer platform, where we'll take a look at some of the new developer enhancements at 9.2. We're not going to cover a lot of detail in the developer slides. There will be 3 upcoming live training seminars that will go into a deeper discussion on developing web applications in .NET, Java, and also building mobile applications. ArcGIS Server has always been a developer platform and continues to be. At 9.2, web applications have a common ADF. The ADF, or Application Developer Framework, is available in .NET and Java and is shipped with ArcGIS Server and ArcIMS. Developers have options to get started building applications by using ArcGIS Server Manager that you saw today, or taking these manager applications and further customizing them, or there's a template and some web controls that are installed in your development environment, and you can begin your new website by using this. Creating mobile applications is new at 9.2. This is only available with the .NET version of ArcGIS Server. This allows developers to build mobile applications that can be deployed on mobile devices. For the Java developers, Java developers can now leverage out-of-the-box geospatial enterprise Java beans. These out-of-the-box EJBs perform GIS tasks in the application. ArcGIS Server provides a richer developer framework and supports popular development environments in Visual Studio 2005 for .NET developers and Eclipse and Sun Java Creator for Java developers. There are SDKs for building web, mobile applications for .NET developers and also integrating EJBs for Java developers. Focused software developer kits for .NET and Java are included, and there are samples, documentation, tutorials, and quick starts to get you started developing applications with ArcGIS Server. This brings us into our final review and Q&A. ArcGlobe documents can be published as 3D services and viewed in the new ArcGIS Explorer client. ArcGIS Explorer is a new free client for displaying services and has a task framework for asking questions. That task framework can be extended through a geoprocessing service. In addition to displaying data, there are services available for asking questions, geoprocessing, geocoding, and network analysis. Data can be managed between remote geodatabases over the web, and 9.2 provides a powerful developer platform for developing server applications. Now I'm going to pass it over to Anne to take some more of your questions.
Thanks, Jennifer. Several folks are emailing in asking when will ArcGIS Explorer be available for download. ArcGIS Explorer is available for download now. Also, if you're an ArcGIS server user, in your box or updated to you later, you will be receiving the ArcGIS Explorer install CD. While we're talking about ArcGIS Explorer, I'd also like to mention ArcGIS Online. ArcGIS Online is in beta right now and is a program, new software product from ESRI that offers online services. You may want to check that out at arcgisonline.com. Chris from Salt Lake City is asking about ArcGIS Explorer as well and how it can be downloaded and used. Chris, just to reiterate, ArcGIS Explorer is free, so once you have the install, it's a function of how your organization wants to distribute it and install it to others. Damon from Charlottesville is asking, can Python scripts be used for geoprocessing services? Damon, yes. The answer is yes. You can use Python scripts with your geoprocessing services. Gregory is asking about the query language used when formulating the data queries. Was it just SQL? Yes. The answer is yes. It was. They are SQL statements. Several folks are emailing asking about ArcGIS Server Standard Edition. Can I do editing? No. Editing is only available at ArcGIS Server Advanced. The editing that is supported in ArcGIS Server is for versioned and non-versioned geodatabases. So, as you have seen in some of the demonstrations, we do have an editing task that's available in Manager. Whether you're going to use the editing task or write your own editing application, that's only available at the ArcGIS Server Advanced Edition. Mark is asking the question, ArcGIS Server Basic Edition, does it include ArcGIS Server Manager? And Mark, the answer is yes. ArcGIS Server Manager is in the Basic Edition. And I'll take your question a step further because I imagine many folks are wondering about this. Are the installs different for these different editions? And the answer to that is no. The installs are the same across Basic, Standard, and Advanced. The difference comes into play in how you have licensed ArcGIS Server through ESRI, whether you have purchased the Basic, Standard, or Advanced. Each of those different licenses will unlock and allow you to use the different functionality. If you are attempting to do something in, say, the Basic Edition that's not supported there, you'll receive a message in ArcGIS Server Manager stating that that functionality is not supported at the level you are licensed for. Let's see, we have some other questions coming in. What clients can be used besides ArcGIS Explorer? That's Bruce asking that question. The clients besides ArcGIS Explorer, of course, ArcGIS Desktop. That question came up earlier. Can I use ArcMap to add data? Also, the other clients are the web mapping application and the mobile applications. Daniel's asking the question, is the web application cross-browser compatible, or is it IE only? Daniel, the answer to that is no, it is not IE only. It's supported in Internet Explorer, Firefox, Mozilla, and Netscape. Our support page lists each of the browser versions, because of course the versions are always being updated, which browser versions we support at ArcGIS Server 9.2. I'll now hand the presentation back to Jennifer.
Thanks, Anne. Just some more information before we go. There will be some additional live training seminars talking about developing with ArcGIS Server 9.2. The next one will be building applications with ArcGIS Server 9.2 using the Microsoft .NET framework. This will be January 18th, 2007. There will also be building applications with ArcGIS Server 9.2 using the Java platform and building mobile application for ArcGIS Server 9.2. There are some instructor-led training classes, Introduction to ArcGIS Server, and ArcGIS Enterprise Systems Performance and Scalability. On the virtual campus, you can also find What's New in Geodatabases at ArcGIS 9.2 and Introduction to Geodatabase Replication at 9.2 to learn more about what's new with geodatabases and also about geodatabase replication. Your comments help us improve our seminars. Please take a moment to complete our survey. Just click the Give Us Feedback link to take the survey. We hope you've enjoyed today's seminar. On behalf of ESRI, I'd like to thank you all for attending.